Hey, hi Baba.
Yeah, hi
So
Lalitha.
today we have seen the article published in Times of India regarding compliance takes center stage in boardrooms, which is, I believe, your favorite topic, which you talk and advise every day as a VCFO services, right? So what's your take on that?
I'm really happy that a company like Tata CFO has really spoken about it. A lot of law firms which have spoken about that in the article. Yes, it's my favorite topic, not just today. It's been 25 years I've been advocating that corporate governance is very important for any organization to scale, grow globally.
Okay. So the article suggests that compliance is no longer a backend function, but a boardroom priority. What has changed in the last decade to cause this shift?
In the last one decade, I would say in the last 2 decades, everything started from 2002 onwards when the India privatization rules got opened up in a much bigger way and people understood the capitalist economy growing and private equity investments coming in, FDI flowing in. There's a lot of regulatory changes which is happening for the 2 decades. But in the last one decade, what has changed is companies going global. So no more we just import from other countries, but our Indian organizations export their products and services to geographies like US, Europe, Canada, and other, including Middle East and also Asia Pacific region. So with this global positioning of any company, regulatory mechanism cannot be compromised if you have to achieve that competitive advantage. So from a local to global, today organizations are functioning without any barrier of geography. So
Okay.
that's biggest shift which has happened in the last one decade.
Okay. So is compliance today about legal survival or reputation management or strategic positioning?
I would say first strategic positioning, followed by legal survival,
Okay.
because people see corporate governance as cost. Many of the organizations,
Okay.
large enterprises, because they are listed and the listing framework mandates them to comply with the regulations and disclosures, they can afford the services of the professionals and they comply with it and they have the natural ability to grow very fast. But when it comes to MSMEs and startups, there becomes a challenge because MSMEs function in a very small quantum and they don't have that experience of what governance is, and most of the times they feel that it is a cost burden and they say that when a notice comes we'll tackle it, which is a wrong perspective.
Okay.
In fact, they should be proactive, not reactive.
Okay.
And that's where the whole game changes of how you position your company, which in turn gives you reputation management.
So are Indian companies equipped to handle increasing global compliance expectations?
Indian companies certainly have to engage professionals like EALKAY or any other professional, equivalent professionals, who are experts in advising right structure and installing the right framework depending on the size of the company. Every size of the company and every geography of the company which any organization operates, it has a different perspective of the fabric. Like any company which is MSME or a startup which is operating only in India, I'm concerned only about Indian regulations. But any MSME or startup which is exporting to US and Europe region with their product or services, then the regulatory framework comes into picture, not just India, but even the US and Euro region. And now with the trade deals getting announced one after another with UK, Europe, and US and Canada, it becomes very important that if a company has to grow organically in the overseas market, it is very important that the legal framework or the governance framework has to be in place before they can scale it right and gain the fruits of the profits which they will be earning overseas.
Should companies treat compliance as a cost center or a value creator?
I would say value creator. Earlier, people used to see it as a cost center. Even today, MSMEs and startups see it as a cost center. But I'm saying it's a value creator.
Okay. So how can strong compliance frameworks improve investor confidence?
See, there are multiple people for any company, be it a startup, MSME, or an enterprise. Enterprise to a listed entities, I won't talk because they are already compliant because of the SEBI regulations. But when it comes to unlisted enterprises, MSMEs, and startups, there are multiple stakeholders involved in a company growth, which includes promoters, which includes angel investors or a venture capitalist or a private equity ecosystem, and also in the growth, the banking system or the banking financial institutions be part of the growth of the companies.
Okay.
So these are multiple stakeholders who are associated with the companies at any given point of time. In that circumstance, when a company is compliant from governance perspective, the trust factor is ticked, the transparency factor is ticked. When trust and transparency are ticked and believed by all the stakeholders, you get growth capital at a cheaper cost and at a much faster pace.
Okay.
Accessing this growth capital will help companies grow faster.
Okay. So, can regulatory preparedness become a competitive advantage?
It will certainly become a competitive advantage because in today's world, when there are no barriers to trade, and thanks to Indian government efforts of executing this trade deals, it becomes very important that your identity is communicated right to the geography where your presence is very minimal.
Okay.
Because there are multiple things like LEI, where your legal entity identifier check is done. That improves the authenticity when a overseas customer looks at you sitting in India. So these kind of things become a competitive advantage because when 100 companies are chasing a particular client in overseas framework, a company which is having a regulatory framework, a compliance framework, and a governance framework obviously will have a first opportunity to be believed to enter into services or a product import agreements, which will eventually become a competitive advantage, getting that higher margin. And when you are able to demonstrate that you are having a governance framework and a compliance mechanism in place, your valuation will certainly give you an additional value, which in the past I've told you, like it's a value creator. Even though you may invest it as a cost, but it will give you back in the form of a valuation. And these things play a role because you are already having a competitive advantage because of the framework which is available in the system.
Okay. So, at LK, what are the services you are offering?
See, at LK, I'm a virtual CFO to multiple clients, not just one, multiple clients. In the real world of my 20 years corporate career, I was already a CFO. So I understand CFO role very seriously. I understand the importance of CFO for an enterprise, especially the growing enterprise. And I understand what frameworks the CFO is required to take into consideration given the promoters' vision, business, and the geographical expansion which they are envisaging. So it is an evolving thing. It's not something which is static. Like, today I advise you saying that this is a compliance framework. It's not static that this template will be multiplied for multiple time periods. Correct. As the business and company evolves, your template keeps on evolving. And such evolving template requires understanding the changing regulations dynamically, wherein every day morning you're seeing one new notification, circular, or a clarification, or a definition, or a trade deal being executed. It becomes more important to see that what is that which is there which will help my company to gain the market and also achieve the cost efficiency.
Okay.
So it is very important that a CFO plays a very vital role. And as virtual CFO for all the startups and MSMEs which I am advising, I create the same mechanism. I advise the same principle. I advise the same framework and tweak according to their requirements. Compliance is never compromised. And if compliance is compromised because at some points of time business gets into this external or internal challenges,
True.
then it becomes very important that how the CFO is advising a promoter, advising the board, disclosing the risk and disclosing the possible penalties. Then what happens? The stakeholders or the promoters will take an informed decision. Okay. So instead of thinking that today it is a cost for me, employ people like us, like LK, to have a virtual CFO if you don't have a permanent CFO at a fraction of a cost, and avoid multiple times of the cost which will come in the future in the form of a notice or an assessment or a reassessment or a non-compliance and a FEMA, which will only burn your pocket, burn your time. All I would say is I'm very happy that very senior people in the industry are talking about governance and compliance being the framework, which is the first discussion happening in the boardroom. This I have been advocating it since I was an employee. As LK, we have been advocating this to our clients, and today I'm very happy that It is published in the Times of India in the wake of multiple trade deals which are happening.
Thank you so much for sharing the insights. I think it is helpful for all the founders, CXOs. Maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.